Hi, I'm John Cronin, Reform UK candidate, local candidate for Southwark. Welcome to Inform Politics and Beyond. Alex Stevens is normally here, but he's out busy campaigning with Richard Tice in the Old Bexley and Sidcup by-election. So I'm left here to hold the fort, so to speak. And today I'm delighted to welcome as my special guest, Gawain Towler, who's been heavily involved with the Brexit party during the referendum and finally getting Britain's exit from the EU over the line. I have to ask you, with all these small parties, where do you stand these days politically?
I do help Tice with reform every now and then, but I'm semi-detached.
Right,
That's probably the best way of putting it.
So I saw you at the SDP conference at the weekend. How'd that go?
I thought it was very interesting. They seem to be a party full of ideas, and one that appeals to a particular section, which are the thinking people. Whether that always works best when you're trying to get votes is a different matter. They are obviously very decent, thoughtful types, but whether they have any cut through or can get cut through, because they're so reasonable. There's something about politics that always applauds the least reasonable. And being reasonable doesn't seem to have that impact that you would hope it would. No, I've got a lot of time for it. I was invited by Willie Clouston, the leader of the party, to act as an observer, and it was interesting. They're good ideas, good people, but whether they've got the political nous, I'm not sure.
I saw him on the New Culture Forum. He was quite in-depth interview, so we got some background into him. So it was quite interesting.
He is an interesting man, and as I say, it's not often you go to a political conference and you have a speaker from the floor talking about the difference between Aristotelian Socratic politics and Platonic politics. This is not pitched at the normal political market, is it?
No.
It was quite. It was fascinating and interesting. However, I'm not sure this is. You go to the hustings, you go to the knocking on doors and say we support Socratic politics or Aristotelian politics, to that Platonic stuff. I can't see it really having quite the electoral kudos that it might need.
With allegations of corruption in the Tory party, where we heard that before, will this have a significant effect in the upcoming by-elections and even the local London elections in May?
We'll see. It's too early to tell. Obviously, we've got three by-elections. Each one is very different.
It's quite close, isn't it?
But there are three by-elections taking place within the next month or so. One, obviously, none of the major parties are standing because of the horrible murder of David Amos at Southend. One, James Brokenshire died far too young, and the response to both of their deaths shows that there are good people in politics still. They're universal. Normally you get some snide comments. This time there were none. Even David Amos, who had very strong positions on issues that cause a lot of annoyance and anger, even it was universal. His opponents would say, so he believed in the death penalty, he was against abortion, he was a Catholic and things of this sort. However, he always behaved with decency, honour, reasonableness, and so those seats are going to be, they're interesting. The Shropshire seat, now that, put it this way, I have spoken to people very clued up in Shropshire in the last few days, who tell me that if Patterson stood as an independent, he'd probably win. If he hadn't had to resign over corruption, but had died in a different way, the comments about Patterson would have been exactly the same as the comments about James Brokenshire. And the corruption story, there was a very good piece by David Goke in Conservative Home yesterday. Now, Goke and Patterson did not see eye to eye. Goke left the Tory party because he was a Remainer. Patterson was one of the ultra Brexiteers, and yet when they worked together, Goke was very polite, very positive about Patterson.
Of course.
Didn't kick him when he was down. And what was interesting, he said his view was that Patterson's failing was a failing of passion. It was not a failing of venality. He believed very strongly that what he was doing was right, that he was trying to save lives, and he was so committed to that cause that he neglected to notice one aspect, which was he was breaking the rules. But as I say, the local response, the local paper isn't kicking him when he's down. He's been an MP for 20 years. Obviously, he's very well liked in the constituency. Yeah. And despite the fact that he fell because of what is perceived to be a corruption scandal, that is not how he is felt up there.
Do you think?
So I'm not sure that it's going to have the impact that maybe the headlines tell you, the newspapers and the Westminster bubble tells you.
Do you think that's a sign of weakness about the U-turns, i.e. that they backed him and then they?
There's been 49 U-turns in 2 years.
Yes, I know.
I mean, he may as well.
Is it weak leadership?
It is weak leadership. I mean, I'm not a great fan of Tom Cummings, but his description of Boris as a shopping trolley, bouncing around the aisles, it does has some truth. I mean, there's the other thing. He's like a cushion. He bears the impression of the last person who sat on it. That feeling about Boris is, I think, very real. But when the polls came out this week, for the first time, the Standard Ipsos Mori poll had the Labour Party ahead of the Tories for the first time in months and months and months. What is interesting is the Labour Party 36, Tories on 35. Yeah. The Labour Party didn't change. All that happened is the Tory party dropped. Now, wasn't that because of their decision to penalise everybody for having a life, over taxes and COP6 and net zero, or was that because of the corruption? Too early to tell. I think there is an assumption. It's basically politician is dodgy. That's priced in. Yeah. Isn't it? Everybody thinks politicians are dodgy. This is not a surprise.
The lack of trust.
This is shock, horror. Golly, politician. No, I don't think that people are shocked by it. They might be disgusted, but they're certainly not shocked.
I mean, there's talk now of them having MPs not having a second occupation or whatever.
That to me is nuts.
What do you think about that? Yeah.
It's nuts. It's a stupid idea. Be it working as a lawyer. I mean, Geoffrey Cox has been in trouble. I don't see why. Be it working as a lawyer. And there's a very good piece in Ken Clarke's autobiography, where he was working in Birmingham as a lawyer, as a QC, coming down to London and working as an MP as Rushden. There's no doubt that his ability, and he was a very good Justice Secretary, he was a very good Home Secretary, and things of this sort. His ability, I'm talking about Ken Clarke.
Ken Clarke,
I might disagree with him on Brexit, but he was a very personable, very decent
he was approachable,
man, very approachable. But the reason he was able to connect in some way is because he maintained that interest on the outside. We have the idea that we just have professional politicians without a link to the outside is an appalling idea. They are up their own behinds as it is. To exclude them and say you are not allowed to maintain those links, those professional links outside, and it may be as a nurse. In one case, there's one of the MPs has done a whole bunch of shifts as a nurse over lockdown and over the COVID crisis. Others have other careers and jobs outside. Now, as long as when they are discussing issue X that pertains to their professional career, they say, I have an interest, and as long as it's marked down, to say that politicians, one, should not have outside interests is, I think, madness, because all you would get are those Weasley little scumbags, these Weasley little chaps who come out of university, get a job as a parliamentary assistant, go out of there, maybe work for a charity for a couple of years, then get selected, get elected, and they know absolutely the square root of nothing about life as it is lived across the country as a whole. So, though one can understand people, particularly politicians, who would be lucky to get a job as a road sweeper if they weren't elected, wanting other people with more talent to lose that link, we should not be gulled into thinking that this would be good for our politics. It would not. One argument, and I have some sympathy with it, is that MPs should be paid more.
Yeah, they're on 85 grand.
And it sounds a lot. It does, but actually, it's not.
The hours they do.
It really isn't. Given the amount of responsibility they have, given the amount of authority they must take, and given the amount of scrutiny they're under, It's not a good wage.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
There's got to be some connection with
tens of
people, isn't there?
there are tens of thousands of council officials who get paid more, well, thousands of council officials, not 10,000, get paid more than the Prime Minister. This is crackers. You can be the head of rubbish bins in Reading Borough Council and getting paid more than by the Prime Minister, who that person has to decide whether to go to war or not. He makes decisions of life and death for thousands, and yet he's paid less than the guy that runs the bins in Reading. This is nuts. So I think that we are in one of our periodic periods of moral outrage, and we might make some very stupid decisions while we are getting into a froth and lather about some people we don't like.
Okay, right. You know, I've been campaigning a lot about
LTNs and things of that sort.
How do you think this is going to affect Southwark? Because we've got a lot of work.
I think it's another one of these things that sounds good on paper. It sounds good to say that I want to save babies, I want to save children. But actually, the impact it has on the people who live near these LTNs, businesses, and all the rest of it is devastating. I mean, you've also been obviously campaigning on green spaces.
Local businesses.
Those are the ones that matter here.
Exactly.
You just look down the Old Kent Road. It's suffered badly from lockdown. And we're sitting in the last pub on the Old Kent Road. When I first moved to London, I remember doing a 19 pub crawl. I didn't make it all the way down, and that wasn't that long ago. I know I'm old, but not that old.
I know.
So the change and the impact of LTNs, the 20-mile-an-hour limit across the city, not just in smaller areas around schools. You understand it 100 yards either side of a school.
Of course.
It's no big deal. But to make it sort of universal, it is part of this general, we think cars are bad, cars are evil, cars are monstrous, let's make the congestion charge bigger, wider, deeper, all the rest of it. The impact that has. I came here by public transport. It wasn't the quickest. I was a bit late, wasn't I? The impact that has on the ability of people to go about their daily business in the way that they see fit, rather than the way the government sees fit or the local authority sees fit, is very serious. And you've got to remember that individual liberty is enhanced by the ability to jump in your car and go.
That's right.
By putting LTNs in, by doubling the size of, and I've gone there are bits of major roads in London where the cycle lanes are now bigger than the.
It's not about the environment, is it? You know,
it doesn't seem to be.
Yeah.
It seems also, and as we all know, driving at 20 miles an hour isn't the easiest thing in the world.
Keep your foot on the pedal.
It's very hard not to over that, and I can see this being a great moneymaker for councils, and who suffers. Who suffers? I don't believe that it has a great deal of impact on road accidents.
No.
I don't believe it has a great impact on things. As long as one's sensible, as I say, around schools, certain areas, then one can make a perfectly good argument to reduce speeds in those places. But I do think it's quite funny. You've got a 24-hour, 20-mile limit outside of school. Well, if they're coming out of school at 2 o'clock in the morning, that'd be fascinating. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
No.
But you've also been doing a lot of work on green spaces.
Infilling estates. There seems to be a lot of disconnect between the residents and Southwark Council. I mean, like, is affordable housing really affordable? You know,
for who?
They keep saying it's affordable housing. But is it for for normal people?
Well, it's the Haygate, isn't it, where there's been this ongoing business?
Yeah, exactly.
I used to live in a squat just behind the place in Elephant.
Wow.
Many moons ago, upstairs a dead pub, and that was in that big estate that was next to Elephant Castle. It's gone. It's now being replaced by the big modern thing. Now everybody's moved out. A lot of people moved out of there with promises that they'll be able to come back, and they're still living in Broadstairs. They've been kicked out and sent away, haven't they? And it's convenient to the council to get rid of what they perceive to be troublesome tenants, but it destroys community. It tears community apart, and everybody says they love community. Oh, except for those nasty ones, the ones who've been here forever. We want to get rid of that lot. We want new communities that we set.
I mean, it has got nasty in that the council have been accused of working for developers and not consulting correctly, and there's been a lot of stuff like lack of consult. Well, basically they've been rushing things through to benefit the developers. They haven't taken into consideration the inconvenience to the residents already there.
But time and again, we have one of these developers that come in and they say it's going to be 50% affordable housing or 60% affordable housing, and that's what's been passed. That's the planning permission, and then halfway through, at the end of it, what do we have? It's the other way around. Sorry, you can't afford it. Things will change. We're going to reduce the cost. And that's that. What is sold to people as somewhere where there'll be lots of affordable housing. By the end of it, actually, we're not going to make the profits we need. So actually, there's only going to be 5% of affordable housing, and the rest gets sold to people like me. And that devastates local communities.
What's the issue about that?
Stuff, politics, local.
Politics? Oh.
I mean, like the old cladding. What we got coming up is the cladding scandal.
Which one? The cladding?
Cladding scandal.
I'm not an expert.
I'm not an expert. I mean, you got a guy in that's experienced in departments, i.e., like Michael Gove. Do you think that it's been dragged on for quite a while? Do you reckon that he's the answer to solving all that?
Almost certainly not. Almost certainly not. But as I say, I'm not an expert in cladding. I would be foolish to even try. I just don't know. So I think it would be irrelevant.
Okay.
Okay.
Are Southwark Police doing enough to address the growing problem of mobile phone thefts in the borough?
Says the man who had his phone nicked today.
It
was a couple of days ago. I think there are so many different things that lumped on the police's thing. To talk about one particular crime is, I think, unfair. What do you do?
They're working at the moment. They're concentrating on one area, SE16. I mean, I've known feedback from people along this road, for example,
but
multiple.
I have a little bit of sympathy. I do have a sympathy with the police. They can't. In this sort of thing, it is, yes, everything should be registered. I do believe that every single crime should be registered, so therefore the statistics allow for resources to be put in the right place. However, I think, other than keeping a very weather eye on those chaps with their stalls of second-hand phones, and which look, I don't know, but look to me like fences in many cases, I'm wary of criticising the police because they have so much else on their plate.
Of course,
a mobile phone theft is low down the list, and it just has to be.
Okay. Do you think that social cleansing is happening in Southwark? Are working class people being priced out of Southwark or even London?
I think not everywhere, but I think some of these new developments do so, as has been discussed about the rebuild and having housing that was supposed to be a lot of it affordable, and then suddenly it can't be because the developers can't make the money they need. So, I don't think it's a hard policy. I think it's a result of certain decisions.
Okay. What's happening at COP26 is how's it going to affect Southwark? Are green policies like the boiler ban and meat tax an attack on the working class?
No, I just think they're an attempt to prove virtue at a world stage that is not. I don't think it's an attack on the working class or the middle class or the upper class. It's basically it is just a foolish idea. They don't have the technology yet to do it, and the cost. They're talking that the cost of it, the average cost of introducing one of these boilers, the new heat boilers, will be about $4,500 per property for the landlord to introduce.
Yeah. I like this.
Don't think the landlord's going to take the hit.
No,
They're going to pass that cost on to the tenants. Of course
Yeah,
they are.
I live in a block of flats, so I look to see how they're going to fit all that into 90 flats, you know.
It can be done, but the hit will be passed on to the tenant.
Yeah.
And whacking $4.5 grand on somebody's rent. Does that hit the working class, or I wouldn't say the working class, but those on lower incomes harder? Of course it does.
Yeah.
You can't help but do so. And some people can afford £4,500 quid, and it's just, but not everybody. I certainly couldn't, and I would think that most people would find that a stretch. But the landlords aren't going to take the financial hit. Of course they're not. They're going to pass it on, like whenever a business is regulated and given more costs by government action, they always pass the costs on to the consumer. That's what they do. Because the business is not going to take the hit. And so you ask, is it going to hurt the working class? Of course it's going to hurt the working class. It's going to hurt everybody. But because of the disparities of income, it's going to hurt the poorer more. Simple.
What are you liberals or?
Reform.
Who?
Reform body, but anything else?
I mean, like the meat tax, for example. I mean, like it's.
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen.
It's drawn the line of what people can eat. You know.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think that is panic headlines. I don't actually think that's going to happen.
Okay.
I think they're going to recoil away from that one.
Okay.
That we are being nudged. The Behavioural Insights Unit is pushing us to do this, that, and eat worms and eat bugs and things of this sort. But and that will be, and I'm sure schools will come in with halal mealworms. But frankly, I don't think they're going to bring in taxes. The kickback would be too great.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, that's all for today. I hope you enjoy. Watching the show. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed.
Wayne.
Sorry I was late.
Yeah, no problem.
Cheers.
Please like and share if you enjoy the content today, and thank you very much.